He walked into the restaurant as a billionaire ready to sign a $5 billion deal that would change his life forever. To him, it was just another business decision. Numbers on paper, profits guaranteed. But just as he was about to leave, he heard something that stopped him cold. A quiet, broken cry coming from behind a locked storage room door. Inside, a young waitress sat on the floor, shaking, trying to hide her tears from a world that had already taken too much from her. What she revealed in that small, forgotten room would shatter everything he believed about success, power, and money. In the next few minutes, one secret would force him to walk away from $5 billion and toward a choice that would change two lives forever. The billionaire had signed deals worth millions without blinking, had fired executives with a single nod, and had walked away from projects that ruined thousands of lives without ever looking back. But that afternoon, standing in the narrow hallway behind an ordinary restaurant, he felt something he had not felt in decades. He heard the sound before he understood it. Quiet, broken sobbing, the kind that comes from someone trying desperately not to be heard. When he pushed open the storage room door and saw the waitress crouched between shelves of supplies, crying into her shaking hands, something inside him cracked. And what she revealed in the next few minutes would make him abandon a $5 billion deal and change the course of both their lives forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unseen moments to change everything, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. The billionaire's name was Jonathan Hale, a man whose life had become a carefully controlled machine. Every minute of his day was planned, every emotion filtered, every relationship measured by value. He had grown up poor, clawed his way into wealth, and somewhere along the way decided that feelings were liabilities. That afternoon, he was supposed to be at the restaurant for no more than 30 minutes, a courtesy visit arranged by his assistant before he signed a deal that would shut down dozens of small, family-owned diners across the state. This restaurant was one of them, a modest place tucked between aging buildings, its survival hanging by a thread. Jonathan barely noticed the warm lighting or the worn booths. To him, it was already gone. The waitress, whose name he did not yet know, had served him quietly. Her uniform was neat but clearly old, her smile practiced but tired. Jonathan had noticed her hands tremble slightly as she set down his plate, but he dismissed it as nerves. People always acted strange around power. He ate without tasting the food, scrolled through documents on his phone, and stood to leave. That was when he heard the sobbing, muffled and raw, leaking through a door marked "Employees Only." He paused, irritated at first, then oddly compelled to investigate. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps some long, buried part of him that still recognized pain. Inside the storage room, the air was heavy with the smell of cleaning supplies and cardboard. The waitress was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, tears soaking into her sleeves. She looked up in shock when she realized she wasn't alone, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear. Jonathan expected apologies, excuses, maybe even anger. Instead, what he saw was exhaustion so deep it looked permanent. He asked her what was wrong, not as a billionaire interrogating an employee, but as a man suddenly unsure of his own place in the world. What she revealed unraveled him. She spoke haltingly, struggling to keep herself together, explaining that she had just received a call from the hospital. Her younger brother was dying, A rare condition had slowly destroyed his organs, and the final treatment they hoped would save him had been denied. Insurance refused to cover it. She had worked double shifts for years, skipped meals, sold her belongings, and still it wasn't enough. This job, this restaurant, was her last lifeline, and she had just learned that it might close within weeks. The tears she shed were not just for her brother, but for the helplessness of realizing that no matter how hard she tried, the world was still ready to take everything away. Jonathan listened in silence, his chest tightening. $5 billion. That was the value of the deal he was about to sign. A deal that would wipe out places like this restaurant, strip jobs from people like her, and funnel even more wealth into his already overflowing empire. He had justified it as efficiency, progress, inevitability, but now, sitting across from a young woman whose life was unraveling thread by thread, those justifications sounded hollow. He thought of his own childhood, of nights when his mother cried quietly in the kitchen, thinking he couldn't hear her. He remembered the fear of losing the little they had. He had promised himself never to feel that powerless again. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what that promise was supposed to protect. Jonathan left the storage room without another word, his mind racing. The restaurant manager tried to thank him for visiting, unaware of the storm brewing behind his eyes. He walked outside into the city noise, the deal documents still open on his phone. His assistant called, reminding him that the investors were waiting, that the numbers were perfect, that this was the biggest expansion yet. Jonathan looked back through the restaurant window, watching the waitress return to her shift, wiping her face, forcing a smile for strangers who would never know how close she was to losing everything. That night, Jonathan couldn't sleep. The image of her crying replayed over and over, mixing with memories he thought he had buried forever. He realized that for years he had been running from the very pain that once drove him to succeed. He had built walls of money and power so thick that he no longer felt the world beneath his feet. And now, one ordinary waitress in a storage room had shaken those walls more than any scandal or lawsuit ever could. The next morning, Jonathan did something no one expected. He canceled the deal. $5 billion vanished with a single decision. His board was furious, his investors stunned, the media confused. Analysts speculated about secret losses or hidden motives. Jonathan said nothing. Instead, he began quietly redirecting resources. He invested in struggling restaurants rather than destroying them, offering fair partnerships instead of hostile takeovers. He established a foundation to support families facing medical crises, funding treatments that insurance companies denied. And yes, he personally ensured that the waitress's brother received the care he needed, not as charity, but as an act of responsibility he felt he owed to the world. Weeks later, Jonathan returned to the restaurant, this time without suits or assistants. The place felt different, brighter somehow, filled with cautious hope. The waitress looked healthier too, though the weight she carried had not fully lifted. She recognized him, surprise flickering across her face, and this time her smile was real. Jonathan realized then that the true cost of the deal he abandoned was not money, but the version of himself he was finally willing to let go. The man who believed success meant stepping over others had been replaced by someone who understood that wealth without humanity was just another form of poverty. As months passed, stories like hers multiplied. Lives quietly changed, businesses saved, families given breathing room. Jonathan never sought credit. He knew that the real transformation had happened inside him, in that storage room where he had been forced to confront the consequences of his choices. The waitress returned to school part-time, dreaming of a future beyond survival. Her brother's condition stabilized. Life did not become perfect, but it became possible. Just before the story ends, take a moment to comment below and share what this story made you feel, or tell us about a moment when kindness changed your life. Near the end of his life, Jonathan would look back not at his biggest profits, but at that one moment when he chose to listen instead of walking away. He understood then that the smallest doors we open can lead to the biggest transformations. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion still matters in a world obsessed with numbers, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, and your belief in kindness makes all the difference.